Many people seem to have conflicting views about the role of the media these days. Too far to the left, too far to the right. Governors, what are your thoughts? Is it a fact that the media today tends to report too much about what's going wrong rather than what's going right, Governor Florio?
Well, I mean, over the last 30 years, the media world has changed dramatically. I can remember when I first became involved, there were 3 network stations. Everybody watched the same thing, so we all had a common base of information. Now, of course, we have all the cable stations, and people just watch what they watch. And that's caused politics to be very much more disruptive because no one's working from the same baseline of information. And that's not been helpful.
Do candidates have to play into the negativity, if you agree with that, Governor Whitman, in order to get coverage?
Well, unfortunately, that seems to be the case. I mean, I think no, if you're just worried about winning an election, no. I really believe that those candidates will stand up and say, this is what I'm about, this is how I'll judge issues, and I'm not going to get into the mud, will do very well. But in order, we saw this in the last presidential. You had, on the Republican side, you had a John Kasich who was very grounded, good credentials, talking about issues, and you had Donald Trump. And Donald Trump just sucked all the air away from all the other candidates. I mean, you had Chris Christie and George Pataki. You had a host of candidates from whom we should have heard, but you couldn't hear because Trump made such outrageous statements.
Well, it's the nature of the beast in some respects. The media is interested in attracting eyeballs or listeners, and therefore they understand that, and the political people understand, to get attention, you have to be almost obnoxious. President Trump is
and that standard is getting lower and lower.
Well, you talk about standards. We hear about fake news, real news. How does one determine what is real news?
Well, it's going to take an awful lot of hands-on effort to get explanations out. I mean, we like to think that in the long run, wisdom will prevail. I'm not sure anymore if that's the case. So we're going to have the media try to become a little more responsible in giving people the opportunities to explain things beyond the 30-second soundbite.
Do people want substance on issues? Do the voters want that, or is all the controversy a lot more interesting?
Well, it appears that the controversy is what catches their attention. I mean, what is the media today? Is the media the mainstream television stations? No. Is it the newspapers? No. It seems to be the Twitter accounts and the internet and Google and places like that. People are looking, unfortunately, they seem to be just looking for the easy answers. And when you combine that with the fact that we have stopped teaching civics and really American history in our schools to a great degree, people don't really appreciate what it takes to be an informed voter.
With 24/7 news coverage and all of the controversy going on, and how do you discern what you want to listen to, and how has this really changed the media and work for candidates today?
I think in some respects the political people also have some responsibilities to try to be able to explain things with a little more detail rather than just the soundbite. I mean, bumper sticker headlines are really the way people get attention. So the combination of the political people feeling a need to be able to explain things in more detail with more depth, and the media giving people the opportunity to do that is very much a very important part of correcting some of the deficiencies that we have now.
Used to be, at least when we were running, I think the same for you, that you had to have 3 or 4 sources to back up a story before you went with it. Okay, I get it today, things are moving too fast, you can't do that. But to give someone who is willing to be quoted anonymously the same level of credence as someone who will stand behind their statements, I think is problematic because you don't know who it is, you don't know what they're saying, and that makes it very difficult for the candidates to get through all this because you have so many people speaking and everybody's a reporter these days.
Let's bring the discussion to the 2 gubernatorial candidates running for office this November. What challenges do they face in getting media attention here in New Jersey with all that's going on in Washington?
That's the problem. I mean, we saw that in the turnout on the primary. I mean, primaries are always unfortunately low, which is one of the worst times for people not to vote because that's your first opportunity to pick your candidates. But again, there's so much confusion going on in Washington and so many changes and stutter starts. And I can remember when I ran, and I'm certain Governor Florio, the same thing when you ran, we were the New Jersey and Virginia, Mayor of New York and the Mayor of Los Angeles were the 4 big races the year after the presidential. And there was massive media attention on those 4 races. I mean, you didn't have to try. There was a lot of media attention. Now, these candidates really have to struggle to get someone to pay attention to what they're saying. And Lord knows New Jersey has enough issues to be discussed.
I'm cautiously optimistic that there's going to be more attention paid to this race than we now think, because it is something that gives an opportunity for Democrats to show an alternative to the Republican philosophy. And I suspect we got two articulate candidates, two knowledgeable people, and if the press, print press, as well as the electronic press, wants to focus on substance a little bit, these candidates will give them something to talk about.
So a long time between now and November. Governors, thank you very much for sharing your views.